Well, good morning, everybody, and I just want to thank you for coming to Spero Day. Wherever you are watching, whether you are in some other city, some other state. I know we have folks watching from California, Colorado, Illinois, Massachusetts, Florida. I even know we have folks watching in other countries, folks from Canada watching. So wherever you are at, welcome to this unique church that is rethinking, reimagining a different kind of Christianity in the 21st century. Now, do you think we really understand love? Do you think as human species we really understand what it is? I mean, scientists think modern humans, as we know it, they've been around the earth 200,000, 300,000 years. And with our Neanderthal ancestors, we've been in existence about 2 million years. And in all of that arc of time, do you think we've mastered love? Do you think we really understand it? Think of all the people who have fallen into it, who have created children because of it, who have held a boombox over their head to pronounce it. Think of all the poems, all the sonnets, all the songs that have been inspired by it. Think of all of Picasso's girlfriends that he painted because of it. Yet when you look at our history, through then and all the way through the postmodern world, the way we treat each other, the way we hurt each other, one might conclude, I don't think we really get it. I don't think we really understand what love is. I mean, we certainly pronounce the high ideals of love, right? No doubt. We so want what love can do. We post pictures of our cute pets and, cuddly kids on our social media. Why? Because we love them. We march for justice. We herald human rights. We call for equality. We even offer gluten-free food, all because of love. And even though I can't get those honey roasted peanuts on my Southwest flight anymore, it's because of love that we protect our peanut allergy kids, right? And so we might think we really get love because we've fallen into it, we've made decisions and lifelong commitments because of it. So yeah, we understand love. But do we really? Because it seems to me that if we really understood love at a grand species level, parts of the world wouldn't be so sick, wouldn't be so in need, wouldn't be so divided or so cruel to each other if we really understood love more and more. I think more of the world would be healed by it if we did, would it not? Now, here in the West, the teachings of Jesus Christ and the writers of the New Testament are what shaped our understanding of love. Nothing has shaped us more than the radical expression of what love is that we find in the New Testament. Of course, all you have to do is attend any wedding and you will hear St. Paul's famous elocution of love, right? You've seen it before. Love is patient. Love is kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep a record of complaints. It isn't happy with injustice, but it is happy with the truth. Love puts up with all things, trusts in all things, hopes for all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Now that is overwhelmingly beautiful, and it was also revolutionary in a patriarchal antiquity culture. No other words, no other expression has shaped the Western understanding of love like these words and other words of the New Testament. But even though we value this as an ideal and have even experienced bits of romanticism and unconditional love that creates loyal, lifelong commitments, I think we still have yet to fully understand it. Perhaps as a human species, we are still in our early development of really understanding and knowing all that love can be. And there should never be any shame in admitting, I'm actually trying to learn what love is, learn the skill of it. Because it's this kind of humility that just widens the door to our heart and our mind. It widens our understanding and growing of actually becoming more skillful at it. So today, let me just introduce to you one of these aspects of what love is, and then I look forward to the next couple weeks. In the Gospel of John, we see this important aspect, this key of what love is in our lives. And we read this section that is just before Christ's crucifixion. He's 33 years old. He's traveled a few years with his followers, his disciples, his apostles, and he's about to leave them. And they are starting to realize it. And they're kind of freaking out. Now listen, we're all going to die, right? There's no news there. But when you know you're about to die, that's different. As a minister, I've certainly been close up to people as they're about to leave this world. And I've been around their loved ones when this is happening. One distant memory I have of this is when a father and his adult son, who had shared a pretty tumultuous relationship, as the father was just hours before his end, I witnessed the father say the most comforting, the most loving, the most healing things to his son. And then I got to watch as those words came over his son, the healing it brought, the comfort it brought. It was a sacred moment. Now in John 14, Jesus is in such a place, and he is ending his time here. And so he talks about life, the afterlife. He talks about comfort and relationships, and he talks about love, and he reveals one of the most important aspects of it. So let's read this in John 14. If you love me, follow me, and I will ask my Father, and he will give you another comforter who will never leave you. He is the Holy Spirit, the Spirit who leads you into all that is true. The culture at large cannot receive him, for it isn't looking for the Spirit and doesn't recognize the Spirit, but you do. For the Spirit lives with you now, and someday the Spirit shall be in you. No, I will not abandon you or leave you fatherless. I will come to you. In just a little while, I will be gone from the world, but I will still be present with you. For I will live again, and you will too. And when I come back to life again, you will know that I am in the Father, and you in me, and I in you. The one who follows me is the one who loves me, and because they love me, my Father will love them, and I will too, and I will reveal myself to him. Now, those words just make Christian spirituality clear, and here Jesus sheds a top aspect of what love is, and it's a top value at Spero Day. And that's the whole idea that love is attachment. Love is attachment. Now, according to philosopher and author Alain de Botton, our deepest longing is to have stable, lasting relationships. But the painful fact is that there are plenty of relationships where painful experiences are part of them, right? This creates one of life's biggest questions. Why is love so difficult? If I want to love, if I feel love, then why is it so challenging to be happy and healthy in it? And in this passage, the disciples are in utter despair. Everything they've been leaning on relationally and spiritually is now coming to an end. And so Christ is assuring his disciples that he loves them, that he's going to be with them, but yet they're still anxious. But he has promised that he will not leave them fatherless. In a sense, I see Christ securing them that love is attachment. Now, at Spero Day, our third value is just this. Our third value is relational connection to God and to each other. And we say relational attachment to God, self, and others. That is the heart of our existence. So what is love attachment, and why is it so important to understand? Well, attachment is the human relational bond that innately and securely forms between an infant and their parent or caretaker through the bonding of a secure and supportive love. It's also foundational in how we give and receive love as we go about life. As human beings, we are just hardwired for it. It's what attaches us to another or not. It's what also creates our love attachment style as we go all through life and meet other love relationships, romantic and friendship. For example, individuals who grow up in healthy households, well, they tend to develop secure attachment bonds and secure attachment styles that lead them to have stronger and longer lasting relationships in adulthood. Researchers say that's about 50% of the population. On the other hand, those who grew up in a household with inconsistent or unhealthy caretaking or parenting, one may then have a greater difficulty forming and maintaining healthy relationships. People in this category may have experienced insecure attachment bonds to their parents or primary caregivers, and researchers say 50% come from this. Folks, that's a lot of people. And as kids, we have wired into us this unconscious assumption and that we're going to be bonded securely to our parents or to our caretakers. In a sense, they are godlike in the fact that we totally rely upon them for every emotional and relational security, every physical aspect of our lives. But when there is a breakdown in that, when there is neglect in that, when there is lack of emotional availability in that, when there is abuse in that, what the research shows is we don't put together a full understanding that the unhealthiness comes from our caretaker or parents. We tend to internalize and blame ourselves. We think, no, the problem is me, and we internalize that. And a lot of parents and caretakers assume it's physical presence, that's enough. And of course, that's key. But as PhD psychologist Deborah Campbell says about bonding and supportive love, she says, love is essentially a form of focused and generous presence, a special kind of authentic engagement. Love is the highest quality presence of our heart. It's a gift that builds esteem and security. And this is what Christ is doing in and for his disciples. He's giving them secure and bonded attachment. Now, giving a contemporary understanding to what we see in John 14 and to what is hardwired into us really comes from the brilliant work from British psychoanalyst John Bowlby back in the 1960s. It was him who gave words and understanding to the whole idea of love attachment that we see playing out in John 14. Which is our ability or inability to understand the skill of love. To be tripped up by its conflict or lack of trust. And so this is so key, and this is what Jesus is showing us here. Now, Bowlby, in all of his research, traced our initial attachment issues back to the earliest days of our development and how we were attached or not, right, to our paternal and primary caregivers. And isn't it interesting that Jesus is recognizing that his friends need this same kind of assurance? He even says, I will not leave you fatherless. Key word. And what makes Bowlby's research so compelling is that it came out of his own life experience. Bowlby was raised in an upper-class British household, but when Bowlby was young, he didn't really have a close relationship with his parents. They were so busy. But he did have a close relationship with his nanny. But when he was only 4, his parents fired that nanny, which left Bowlby lonely and cut off from any secure relationship he had. Then at the age of 7, they shipped him off to a boarding school, and he completely hated it. But yet he continued to progress in his studies. He became a brilliant med student, then eventually a prolific researcher. Then in the 1950s, when Bowlby worked for the World Health Organization, he wrote this report called Maternal Care and Mental Health. And in it, he tore down the popular assumptions of the day, which was, if you show too much care and kindness to a child, you're going to spoil them. You're going to inhibit their development. Now, did any of you grow up hearing the idiom, spare the rod and spoil the child, which we know meant that if you do not punish a child severely when they misbehave, their behavior is going to become worse? And for some of you, this was even Christianized with Bible verses to back all of that up, which may have then even impacted your God attachment. It's what got internalized in you about God. Well, Bowlby's research eventually showed the opposite, and it showed that kindness and nurturing and relational love is as important to a child's development as a healthy diet. And as a result, when Bowlby released that report, created all kinds of reforms, especially in England. And then in 1959, through more research, Bowlby published a book called Separation Anxiety. And now you know where the term came from. And you can even be quite impressive at your next dinner party when you drop that little ditty, that little fact. Well, the research showed that if we are insecurely attached from the emotional love of our caregivers, it creates an anxiety within us. If a child is neglected by their parents or caregivers for too long, this anxious need for love is created in them. They tend to believe anything good might disappear at a moment. And then this need for reassurance, it just grows more insecure. And if it's not displayed, the child goes back and forth between uncertainty, but then having hope, back to despair. And all this emotional flipping back and forth creates what Bowlby calls anxious attachment. But in his research, he goes on to show that the degree of emotional neglect from parents or caregivers also creates other developmental problems. The child could end up feeling so helpless that they then emotionally detach. And then the child kind of caves within their own world in order to protect themselves. And as a result, some children become more remote, some become more insecure, some emotionally end up underdeveloped. They have a problem trusting themselves or trusting people in the world around them. And what Bowlby called this was avoidant attachment, which just, it makes a child, to invest emotionally in relationships becomes a risky venture, even though they desperately want it. This is why understanding love attachment spiritually and relationally is crucial. Let me show you this. A few years back, psychologist Edward Tronick at Harvard, he conducted what is now the famous still face experiment that demonstrates the importance of attachment. Take a look.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly side.
But the consequences of all of this don't necessarily just impact our childhood, they are lifelong. The impact of positive or negative attachment is something that impacts our adult relationships. It even impacts our God attachment. You know, folks, this is why we need to be very careful not to pose Christianity around these insecure attachment styles, and yet it has been. When Christian spirituality is a fear-based relationship with God, when there is the promise of eternal judgment, eternal damnation, or if I don't get this right, or the people I love don't get this right, something bad is going to happen. This just creates an insecure attachment style with God, which is this deep, even unconscious fear of abandonment, that maybe this God will leave me. And you know, this is consistent with the latest research that shows that our brains and hearts can be rewired. Regardless of the attachment style that you were nurtured with, we can actually respond in ways that rewire our brains, reset our hearts to a more healthy and secure attachment with God, the people we love, and the greater world around us. Now, we don't know much about the specifics of any backstory of the early followers of Jesus. Sometimes we have some indication. But either way, Jesus is modeling things that are going to rewire them and their patterns towards towards a more secure attachment with God and with others. And I want to say, you can rewire you by doing the same. So look what Jesus is doing here, especially in verses 15 and 16. He says, "The Father will give you a comforter who will never leave you. He is the Holy Spirit who leads you into all that is true." And then in verse 18, "No one will abandon you. I won't leave you fatherless. I will come to you. Because they love me, my Father loves them, I too, and I will reveal myself to them." So how do you and I move towards a healthy love attachment? Well, it's by healing the shame within us. And so here Jesus is offering gobs and gobs of acceptance. And this is becoming foundational. When religion and faith is presented in terms of obedience or right beliefs, in my opinion, that just creates more and more insecure attachment. But when you and I practice and hold on to the acceptance of ourselves and others, when we become less fault-finding in ourselves and others, when we learn to heal the shame from maybe a bad relationship or even a bad spiritual theology, things change. And healing your shame, it just rewires your brain, it resets your heart, and I believe it reforms a new kind of love attachment to God, to Christ. Another thing Christ is demonstrating in this passage is how he rewires us. It's by modeling emotional expression. It's by modeling a healthy response over deregulated reactions. So when you and I learn to identify and honor and then assertively express our emotional needs, we heal. We rewire neural pathways. We learn to stop reacting automatically with anxiousness or insecurity. You build healthy, loving attachments. Now, this can be a challenge, especially those of us who have had a nervous system and patterns that have just reacted very automatically. But when you and I can learn to identify our triggers or unhook what causes them, you and I begin rewiring all new patterns that create healthy, secure attachments. Look at this in verse 19. In just a little while, I'll be gone from the world, but I will still be present with you. What Jesus is doing here is he is being direct and clear. He is in no way manipulative. So when you and I risk being authentic, risk being secure and clear, when we don't gaslight or manipulate, anyone's interest, when we're just clear and direct, we also begin to rewire towards healthy attachments. So begin to pay attention. Are you direct? Are you clear? This is something I've really had to grow in. Here's one final one for today, and it's in verse 17. For the Spirit lives in you now, and someday the Spirit shall be in you. You and I rewire our hearts, our minds, by introducing the process of spiritual self-soothing. In his absence, Jesus promises the Holy Spirit's presence, that even though he's gone physically, the Spirit of God will be with them. Folks, this is deeply spiritual. It's not treating God as this magical God who just supernaturally swoops in, but it is reflecting that we are made in the image of God. And when we do things in accordance to how we're made, that is naturally spiritual. We are reflecting God's image. You and I can do this. We can do this. So love is attachment. And when you and I hold that as foundational of our relationship between us and God, us and each other, and us and the culture in the world around us, we begin to build or rebuild a healthy attachment style. Spero Day believes to the core of its being that being attached and attuned to God is the heart of our existence. So may you grow in love. May you rewire your brain, reset your heart. May you move towards healing your shame. May you grow in understanding and identifying the triggering reactions. May you be clear in your communication, direct with others and yourself. And may the beginning, the middle, and the end of your spiritual relationship with God be love, and attached and attuned to a God who says, I will never leave you, I am with you. I will never leave you as an orphan. I am here to be present and to comfort you. Let's pray. God, I pray for those especially who may have not been raised in environments where there was healthy, secure attachment. Maybe it was some neglect by a caregiver or parent. Now, this isn't the time to blame or to wave a finger at or to judge. But this is the opportunity to go, okay, God, help me rewire my love attachment. That the basis of my spiritual life is enveloped in a God who is attached to me and a God who I can be attached to by this unconditional, ever accepting, ever forgiving love. And that nothing can separate us from that. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing.